The people in the Renaissance valued the type of person who was known as a Renaissance man. A Renaissance man is a person who is well rounded in their skills. Schools during the Renaissance were very similar to today's schools. They would teach the kids basic topics and build on those ideas.
During the Renaissance, Europe underwent a massive shift away from religious medieval schooling. Instead, they embraced humanism, an educational movement focused on grammar, history, poetry, and classical literature, designed to create well-rounded citizens who could think, speak, and lead, to make the common man literate, just like now.
By looking at education and humanism, one can see it reshape daily life by standardizing a classical curriculum and expanding access to higher learning through universities and institutions. This is important today because it laid the foundations for our modern liberal arts, education, and current university systems. The students in school would learn about religion and how to be a Renaissance man, as well as other languages and basic English. For example, in countries that were Catholic, the education was sometimes done through the church. Another example is the was trained intellectually, physically, and spiritually. On top of that, the Renaissance man was a person who was meant to be good at many things. This evidence supports my thesis, as all of the things talked about can somewhat relate to what we do in school today. Most of the students, still this day, aspire to be a Renaissance man, which is why schools decide to teach a wide variety of subjects to the students. Schools train all students intellectually, physically, and spiritually. In conclusion, education in the Renaissance time was moderately similar to the education people receive today.
This section will explore what students actually learned during the Renaissance, moving away from medieval logic to focus heavily on classical Greek and Roman texts, language, and moral philosophy. The Renaissance educational model, known as Studia Humanitatis, the studies of humanity, fundamentally prioritized grammar, rhetoric, history, poetry, and moral philosophy. Literature and language studies exploded during this era because scholars looked back to ancient classical authors as the ultimate models for eloquent speaking and writing. Renaissance schools expected students to master Latin not just as a dead language, but as a practical tool for modern public speaking, political leadership, and community life. This evidence shows that the content of education directly changed daily life by shifting focus onto human potential and civic duty, and is such as establish the core subjects we still call the humanities today. While what students learn changed drastically, the places where they learned grew just as fast, leading to a massive boom in universities and religious schools.
During the Renaissance, many schools started evolving in the way that they teach their kids. They changed everything they did to fit the students' needs better. For example, the schools allowed their students to study either Greek or Latin as some options for languages. Another example is some schools prioritize the spacing of buildings to maximize the students' learning abilities. On top of that, the schools in the Renaissance started teaching kids things that were fundamental to learning. This evidence supports my thesis, as they all show how the schools started shaping the way they teach the students to make them learn better and faster. In conclusion, the modernization of education in the Renaissance caused many modern day schools to be influenced by it. This section focuses on the institutional growth in late Renaissance Italy, specifically how universities evolved and how religious order, like the Jesuits, built widespread school networks.
Like Lakshman said, humanism didn't just stay in small private academies, successfully integrated into major Italian universities, changing how higher education functioned. Religious groups, particularly the Jesuits, became major players in education during the late Renaissance, creating highly structured colleges that blended religion, devotion with humanistic classical studies. As schools and universities expanded across Italy, literacy rates rose and broader class of people, not just top elites, but common men gained access to advanced reading and administrative careers. The expansion of these universities and structured schools institutionalized the Renaissance movement, making education a a permanent feature of developing urban societies rather than temporary trends. The rapid growth of these schools ensured that the intellectual changes of the Renaissance would outlast the era itself and shape future generations.
A signal, the, to wrap everything up, it is clear that the educational shift in the Renaissance was not just about reading old books. It completely reorganized how society prepared young people for the world.
We can see this clearly through the inventions of the humanists curriculum, which put poetry, history, and communications at the center of learning, and through massive growth of university systems and institutional networks, the spread the spread of these ideas across Europe. We can also see through the modernization of education and the education of the Renaissance man how it inspired the way schools teach their students today.
By moving away from the rigid medieval styles, Renaissance education prioritized human potential and civic engagement, permanently changing the daily life of students.